Well, yay, we're live. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to have this amazing opportunity, and you guys are in for a treat because I've got Dr. David Rosensweet, and he's probably one of the most impressive physicians that's moving the area of hormone knowledge forward. Recently named one of the biggest names in anti-aging medicine by the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's written some books, and we're going to talk about how you can balance your hormones. And he's got so much knowledge. And also I just heard that he's in North Carolina, where I used to practice. And so it's nice to connect on multiple levels. But he is right now trying to help people understand the idea of using hormones to really change people's lives. When our hormones are balanced, it creates new possibilities for us. So as an educator, an author, and also, guys, down below, he's also given you a way that you can get his recent book and a discount on hormones if you're interested in bioidenticals. But let's start talking a little bit. Dr. Rosensweet, thank you so much for joining me. And how are you doing today?
I'm having a really good day, special day. Yeah.
It's nice. Well, I wonder if you would share with us a little bit about your journey. Basically, how did you start to understand that you needed to champion hormone balance, which is what I think of you with a cape flying behind you, guys. Really, Dr. Rosensweet is a huge name in the balancing of hormones. How did you find yourself in this place?
Well, I started out as a holistic doctor, medical doctor, long before there was a name, and was in a broad-based holistic practice. And a patient of mine, Deborah, who was in her mid-40s, came storming into my office one morning before it was office hours. I was doing some paperwork, and I knew her really well. And she walked right up into my desk, pounded her fist on the desk, and was saying, "I'm really losing it. I'm going crazy. And don't think you know me. This is serious." And I did know her. And this woman was so successful, she had retired in her mid-40s. So I knew something was up.
Mm.
And serendipitously, or however our careers are divinely guided and unfolding, I had been speaking to a world expert on progesterone about 3 weeks prior, and I gave her some progesterone. And 3 weeks later, I got a letter from her. That's how it was done back then. It's 28 years ago.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe this stuff. I'm totally myself again." And that's very impressive, as you know so well. To see someone have a dramatic beneficial change with not a lot of intervention is really significant. But I've never really guided my career. Deborah started speaking to her friends, and before I knew it,
The news gets out, right?
it does. Before I knew it, I was treating a lot of women in menopause, and I had definitely started out with bioidenticals. It made perfect sense to me, and decided to really focus in on getting this one right, because women are so individual, men are so individual. And I was really learning it from the ground up before there was a lot of knowledge. So that's how I got started. And really, I wrote a book early on because I figured, well, the hormones are going into a woman's body. She's the one who's going to be feeling this. I pretty much have to figure this out from the ground up. Why don't we team it? So, and that's what I did. Through one patient after another, we would do these trials of this dose and this balance. And I quickly learned that there was a wide individuality as far as what's the right amount of the 4 ovarian hormones. And it varied woman to woman. So no big whoop. If we just started low and gradually increased the dosages and played with the balance, we would clinically come up with a woman saying the magic words, "Oh my God, I feel myself again." And it's, boy, that's one of my favorite sayings in all of medicine. And then I had also been fortunate enough to start out with the 24-hour urine hormone test.
Okay, tell us a little
And
bit
that
about
was
that.
huge.
That's
That was
do people
huge.
have to, how would someone do that? I'm sure people listening are like, 24-hour urine hormone, how would I do that? Like,
Well, it's done through a professional like yourself,
mhm.
and it's the state of the art. It's been the gold standard since the late 1960s. And it hasn't become widespreadly known because in order to get good at interpreting it, you have to study it. You have to get some
Right.
mentoring. And so it's not as simple as what we were trained in, but it will have its day. It's constantly on the rise because it doesn't work to just have a woman feel good. That's great. That's a
Yeah,
great
right.
jump on things. But I personally did a study of 54 of my most recent patients years ago, and who said, I feel good. And what I found was that 50% of them were not on dosages sufficient to protect their vagina and their bones.
That is so important. So, but if you're looking at like the metabolites and the what's coming out in the urine, you can get a better sense of the balance. Do you combine that also with salivary testing or blood testing, or do you really just look at the urine when you're measuring it?
Well, we do a lot of blood testing, of course, as you have in your career. They're tremendously valuable, but not for hormones.
Mm.
And I started out with salivary hormones, but I was not getting the clinical correlation. It didn't make sense to me. And a colleague of mine, Dr. Jonathan Wright, up there in Tahoma, Washington, who brought us bioidentical hormones, he said, you got to try the 24-hour urine hormone test. It says everything we want. And then we've even done in our projects comparing different forms of testing. And I can give you the short version. The only one that comes close to getting it right in a woman that you're treating or a man that you're treating is the 24-hour urine hormone test.
Well, I mean,
They're,
this is so,
they're,
yeah, it's so good to hear that. I mean, because I've certainly used urine. I've also used salivary testing too. And of course, these things that the traditional insurance doesn't usually pay for, but it's important, gals, that we get this information so that we can see really what's happening and how your body's processing the hormones. So when someone, how do we know if we have an imbalance? I mean, I know personally, when I hit menopause, wow, I mean, my brain went, for one, my brain was, it was such a different experience. I was more irritable. In fact, my nurses, they were whispering among themselves one day, and they said, and I was like, what's wrong? And they're like, hey, did you take your hormone? And I actually had run out, and I hadn't been taking my hormones for a few days. And it's so funny that they recognized I was more irritable. I wasn't sleeping well. My brain was not functioning. And then, when you get them in balance, it's like you're giving your life back, right? So um, that's
well, the main way you tell is if you're a human being, you've got it. That's the main criteria that you're a human being. I'm sure it's present in the animal kingdom as well. But our hormone levels, men and women, they peak. The peak output of the ovaries, for example, is age 20 plus or minus a couple years. And then for a variety of reasons that we don't keep up with that high output, we gradually decline. And those declines can be subtle, or even some women in their 30s start to notice some things that just don't feel quite right about their periods or some symptoms they're getting. But somewhere in the 40s or 50s, the ovaries stop doing it. And these are the most powerful biochemicals in our body, hormones in general. And so when we lose them, well, for example, with women, 75% of women, when the hormone levels drop, they get really significant life-stopping symptoms. The ones you named, so common. brain not thinking clearly. Well, there's so many estrogen receptor sites in the brain that when a woman loses her estrogen, a lot of women don't think clearly. And sleep disturbances and mood disturbances and hot flashes and things that you don't see, changes in the health of the vagina and dysfunction of the bladder and the skin and the hair and the energy and the libido and pain on intercourse. Why so many symptoms? Because these are so powerful. They have such a strong beneficial effect. And 25% of women do not have the symptoms. And
But
they're the ones
they're
that are out there.
so they might feel okay, but all these other things, the roles that their hormones would be playing, those systems aren't working as well as they should be. Is that what you're saying? So,
Precisely.
yeah.
They're
Okay.
feeling like, hey, what's the big deal about menopause?
Right.
I'm fine. I had an easy menopause, but they're losing their bone. Their arteries are at risk for arteriosclerosis as never before. They're losing their vagina. They're going to lose their bladder function, and gradually they're losing other functions as well. So it's those women that I'm most concerned about. One could say, well, menopause is so rough. And I could say, no, it's the body saying, look, something's going on here. I really want to capture your attention. I really want you to get to what really needs to be done here. And it's very inspiring, really, to go out there and get some help.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's neat the way the body it's trying to talk to us. And with our initial training, a lot of times we would try and do more symptomatic treatment, like let's get the hot flashes down, right? But we are really talking about root cause balancing, so that we're not suppressing symptoms. We're listening to the body. And I think that it's beautiful to see that. And then also where there's concern, I wanted to bring this up because I didn't want to forget it. And that is that we are on the verge of, there's a little bit of problems with that we might not continue to have bioidenticals as an option. And that's scary to me, because you'll peel my estrogen from my cold dying hand, right? I love my bioidenticals. And I know you're working actively to help preserve our ability to do that. I would love to, I want to know what I can do to support that too. And if people can be involved in promoting that idea that we need to have people who know how to prescribe them and will continue to be able to prescribe them.
There is a definite threat to the existence of compounding bioidenticals. And I don't know how deeply to go into the story, but women have been treated with hormones, and men have been treated with hormones for 1,000 years. And then in the 1940s, the pharmaceutical manufacturers figured out how to extract hormones from horses' urine. Why horses? Because there's a lot of hormones in horses' urine. There's a lot of urine there in pregnant mares. And they produced the most popular and profitable drug of all times, Premarin, pregnant mare urine-derived estrogens. And 40% of American women in menopause were on Premarin prior to 2002. That would be 18 million American women. And this false study, this study that was done was reported falsely. It suggested that there was increased risk for breast cancer. That was not what was in the study. That's really
This is so important, because women hear this all the time from their physicians who trained, back when, and have this idea. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but tell us more about the Women's Health Initiative and what happened.
So it was a very large medical study, and they stopped it over much controversy out of a misunderstanding of it, because one of the arms of the study, where Premarin was combined with something, said that there was a 1.26 increased relative risk for breast cancer. But that is statistically insignificant. And we know in medicine that the word statistical insignificant means don't draw any conclusion, folks, because we don't have any evidence. But that part was glossed over by the press that exploded this information worldwide and terrified women all over the world and healthcare providers. And the usage of hormones went from 18 million down to maybe 1 million or 2, with very significant consequences. And I want to clarify what that risk subject is really about in just a minute. But as many of us studied the study, and we said, wait a minute, there is no reported increased incidence here. It's not true. Why is everyone freaking out? And there's all these studies that say it's good. And so many doctors started turning towards prescribing hormones that were different than pregnant male-derived urine hormones. They were pure molecules identical to what was present in the female ovary, called compounded bioidentical hormones.
Mm-hmm.
There's 8,000 compounding pharmacies around the United States. The only type of pharmacies there ever was up until about 100 years ago was compounding pharmacists. They were taking ingredients and making up stuff in creams and gels and capsules. And through the inspiration of a couple notable people, one of them in Tahoma, Washington, they said, listen, why do we use horse urine stuff? The pure molecule is available. Why don't we put that in a cream or a gel or something? And so this became quite popular. And by the time a study was done in 2017, there had been a return to the usage of hormonal treatment of women from 18 million down to about 1 million, then back up to 6 million. And over half of these women were on compounded bioidentical hormones.
Ah, okay.
And the most popular and profitable drug and the companies involved saw what happened. And they started a process to see if they could get their market share back. And it really probably comes down to that. And, I could elaborate on that, but I won't right now unless you ask. And there's been a campaign to shut down these compounding pharmacies so that there'll be a restoration of the market for these other products, is what I think it comes down to. We're big tent. We want women and healthcare providers to be able to choose. If a woman thinks that Premarin is the best option for her, or her healthcare provider does, bravo. We want to put the choice back in the hands of the physicians and the women and the men too.
Right. Well, I mean, because men, testosterone replacement also is going to change if we lose the ability to do compounded medications. So it's not just women. And I think it's very concerning. The money involved is driving care instead of people's choice, and we do need to have choice regarding how we are treated. So yeah, and I invite you to say anything more. I'm definitely want to learn more about how I can help the cause, right? And I know there's people who are going to listen to this who are going to want to help the cause too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, if I could go in 2 directions, because I dropped a statement in there that could be of concern, and it's still generally held as this. That original study committee that reported the Women's Health Initiative retracted it,
Right.
published that in 2016 and said, after 18 years of follow-up, there is no increased risk of breast cancer, heart attack, and stroke. And there's a phenomenal book out there written by a breast cancer specialist and oncologist called Estrogen Matters, for anyone who really wants the details.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I've summarized these details in the book that we're making available. You're making it available. Can I call you Linda? Please call me.
Oh, yes, please do.
Please call me David.
Okay.
In chapter 3, I really zero in on what's so about the risk. And I'd like to just say it out loud what's so about the risk. We're all at risk for thousands of diagnoses, as you and I know. We learned about them and we've seen too many of them. And we're all at risk for cancer. And as a male, I'm at special risk for prostate cancer, and there's special reasons why that's so. and women are at a special increased relative risk for breast cancer. But having said that, women who are treated with hormones are at less risk for breast cancer, heart attack, and stroke than women who do not receive hormonal treatment. That's the science. I elaborate on it in chapter 3 again in that free download. And the Bible on it is Estrogen Matters by Avram Blooming, where the full science is reviewed. So that's starting to be a little more known, but most healthcare providers are still shy of hormones. Your second question was, in 2019, I was invited to testify in Washington, D.C. in front of the National Academy of Science. They did a special committee on compounding bioidenticals, and I'm sorry to report that this was not about science. It was about an FDA-funded attempt to challenge the bioidenticals, and the FDA is primarily funded by the pharmaceutical manufacturers. So, it's like a lot of things going on. The best practices, the most honest and golden rule practices are not necessarily what's guiding consciousness at this primitive time called 2022. And ever since we saw that there was a vendetta against trying to suppress compounding, we formed a couple committees. The American Compounding Pharmacists, APC, they have a website called compounding.com. Compounding.com. And on there, there's some information for sure. And there's a simple click for women to notify their congresspeople, their congressional representatives, that we care about this and we don't want to lose access. And we have a couple other websites, cbhrt.coalition.org, cbhrtcoalition.org. This is a professional website. And then soon we're adding Safe Hormones. And I think for now, the best thing that women could do is spread the word that there's going to be a moment of truth where it's going to be time all together now to notify the Congress people all in one fell swoop. Right now, there's been a trickle of communications, and we don't think a trickle is going to do it.
Right. It's got to be a grassroots, everybody together.
And we're concerned that it's going to take a ruling to prohibit compounding, to mobilize the American population. Well, we're setting up the infrastructure to do it. And there'll be a place on our website, plus Save Hormones, that website, that'll not only be able to contact your congressperson directly, but also the FDA and also the department of the FDA that's in charge of all this. And gee, if you have a mailing list, your mailing list could organize and we'll notify you like, okay, time for all of us together now. Let's get a flood of contact to the Congress. I think this is the best strategy rather than a trickle.
Right.
So
I think that's
there's
all these voices at once, right?
Yeah. And we'll keep you in the loop, and that's important. And we'd love for you to join us, Linda. There's that CBHRT coalition.org, or if you would just email me, I'll put you on the committee.
Well,
we have various projects going on.
Yeah.
And the physicians, and there's physicians, attorneys, lobbyists, compounding pharmacists on this coalition. There's a lot of information on that cbhrtcoalition.com about the report,
what to do,
what we're facing, the updates. So thanks for asking.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm excited, and I'm excited. I mean, we really do need to band together to keep the ability to receive these as treatment. All of you guys who are listening, you guys and gals, and as we think about Who will benefit? It's you, it's your grandkids, it's your great grandkids. This needs to become an issue that everybody talks about. So I'll definitely try and mobilize my troops that I have. And thinking about menopause and balance of hormones, it's important that you find a provider who has some experience. And when your doctor says to you, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, we need to dive a little deeper, right? And so now you guys will have some great resources, Happy, Healthy Hormones, How to Thrive in Menopause, and Estrogen Matters, that book. I can't wait. That's going to be on my Christmas reading list. Definitely be, when I go on my vacation, I'm going to have to read that one. Because it's going to affect you and your family to come. So as we're trying to find help, where are the best resources to find doctors? I know you've trained a lot of doctors in how to take care of people with their hormones. Can they look like through A4M, or where's the best spot to find doctors who can do this?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. One can be, if you interview 5 of your friends, one of them is probably on compounding hormones and knows about who's doing it in your area. And we've trained over 600 physicians and nurse practitioners. And if you contact Sherry at menopausemethod.com, Sherry, Sheree, at menopausemethod.com, or go to our website, menopausemethod.com, very often we can link you up with a provider in your state. And it's never been easier to get treated in a certain way, because menopause lends itself beautifully to telemedicine.
Right. Yeah.
You still need a female exam, but you don't need your hormone specialist to do the female exam. All of the female process of replenishing hormones can be done through telemedicine, which means you only need to find one provider in your state that's doing telemedicine. In Washington State, for example, we've trained a couple just wonderful providers, and we'd love to assist you if you're interested.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I do give folks bioidenticals, and I find that's the way that I practice. And I think that, we'll have people watching from all over the country after this interview is done. So I just want to make sure Sherry, we'll make sure we put that below in the links. So if you guys want to reach out to Dr. Rosensweet's office, you can reach them. I had another question on the tip of my tongue, and then it raced away. So how do you think that we're going to help all these physicians who were educated in the time when that study came out, and they still think that hormones are dangerous, and they don't understand the retraction? Because, it's funny, that retraction, it was like a blip. Right? When they had this idea that maybe it was dangerous, it was all over the news, right? And so that made a huge splash. And then, oh, never mind. Well, that didn't get really publicized. How are we going to help educate physicians around this? And what can people take something to their doctors? I mean, I think the books are a good idea, but doctors often don't like to be told. I know that's not true for you. I don't think it's true for me. I'm very open, but I'm open to people bringing me. That's where I learn my things. Patients bring me things all the time. But what's a way that we can suggest to people that they could talk to their doctor about to open the conversation, to say maybe there's more there, and help direct doctors?
Well, the good news is it's trickling out. The actual medical facts, the science of lessened risk, is getting out there. And Dr. Blooming was at the spearhead of he's traveling around the country. And, the demand is there. It's easy to say to a woman, well, you should just live through menopause. And a man, you can easily say to a man, well, it's okay, your erection's gone. You're just aging. But in individual men and women, they don't accept that. And everywhere there's pockets of aggression saying, wait a minute, I'm going to find somebody who is doing this. And there are thousands of healthcare providers licensed to dispense hormones all around this country. And they got active stuff going, they've got active practices going on. And so I always say that the main job of any woman or any man is to go shopping.
Right.
You got a project to do.
Yep.
You got to research it. And if you type into a search engine, compounded bioidentical hormones, and this is another way to do it. There are 8,000 compounding pharmacies around the United States. If you go to your local compounding pharmacist, there's a tremendously high likelihood that they're going to know exactly who's writing the prescriptions and who they like.
Right. Yes.
And I don't know how many compounding pharmacies there are in Bellingham, but there's got to be more than one.
Yes, there are a couple, right? Yeah, that's a great
Go
point.
to the compounding pharmacist and talk to the pharmacist, because high likelihood they are receiving prescriptions and they know the prescribers, and they know the ones that are more skilled than others.
They also, I had a compounding pharmacy once offer before I started to do this, and I was just beginning, like sort of a baby integrative doctor. And she said, hey, I'll send you to a conference to learn how to do this. And so sometimes those compounding pharmacies will even collaborate with the doctors so they can learn how to, and they will give knowledge and point you in the right direction. So if you're a doctor looking at this, and I had a doctor just yesterday say to me, well, ask me about what I thought about postmenopausal hormones. And I'm like, yeah. And they said, well, what are some books I can read? And so now the estrogen book, definitely going to be suggesting that to them. And know that the compounding pharmacies are great resource for you guys and for your doctors, everybody. So wow, this is really, I feel like this has been a landmark moment for me to get to meet you. And it really has been. And so now I have a lot of ways that I can help physicians who've asked me about this too, by giving some of these resources out.
I spend 80-90% of my time training and mentoring physicians. The medical wheel has been invented, and we all did it. We went to medical school and then internship and then residencies where you're mentored. You get more knowledge and you're mentored by people who have a lot of experience. And that's what I do. And so we have an online training program that I think is excellent, superb. And then I do have weekly grand rounds with all of our providers so that they can ask specific questions. So I love our training the best. So, if physicians go to the menopause method or iobim.org, we can train you up.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
Delighted to talk to any provider. If there's any woman out there that has their favorite healthcare provider, physician, nurse practitioner that they really like and really trust, and they're open. And there's a lot of open-minded, more and more kind, caring physicians and nurse practitioners. They're all over the place. And if you say, would you consider this? And maybe just talk to Dr. Rosensweet. I'm happy to talk directly to any physician or nurse practitioner on the planet Earth, but particularly the USA. So that they get a gentle and a real professional approach to what this subject's about and how you get good at it. It's a good thing to get good at. These are powerful. We at A4M this year, I'm going to be really presenting a strong case for specialization in this. We need more training and more uniform training and standard of care. So, but at any rate, I'm open to talking to anyone. And can I give you my email address?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you're open to that, and
you have it, but it's DRR, Dr. R, DRR, at menopausemethod.com. Just
That's
email
easy.
me. I'll talk to any professional.
Oh, wow. Well, that is such a gift. Thank you for sharing that and giving your email address like that. And I know that there is going to be people whose lives are going to change because of this conversation. And I know, yeah, I just feel like I feel those little tingles when good things are happening. You know, when you say to a patient like the right words and you feel, I call them angel wings. I'm like, I feel the angel wings. So, all right. Well, this has been a joy. And I hope that if I can help in any way, I'm going to help the cause. I'm going to get this out to my people. And there are a lot of links below for you guys who are watching, and you can reach out to me or Dr. Rosensweet. And thank you again for joining me. So I'm
Thank you
gonna,
so much.
yeah, I'm going to say goodbye to the folks on YouTube, and please comment below and let me know what you thought and if you have questions. Okay, so bye to all our streamers.